Hello. If you are here, you likely know exactly what the void is. That hole in the chest that reason tries, in vain, to fill with logic or with the passing of days. For a long time, that is what my life looked like after losing the one I loved most. The loved one, X. Foundation of my life, my best friend, the other half of my soul. It is difficult, almost impossible, to describe the dimension of that connection to those who haven't experienced it. It wasn't just love. It was a symbiosis, a synchronicity of souls where words were often unnecessary. Our story was not limited to isolated moments. It was a continuous fabric, where every thread of my existence was deeply interconnected with theirs. Our dreams were shared, our plans merged, and even our fears were faced hand in hand. With their passing, I didn't just lose a person. I lost the compass that oriented my world. I lost the witness to who I truly was, and I lost the future we had meticulously designed together. The initial shock was numbing, a brutal defense mechanism that prevents us from feeling the pain in its fullness. I walked, I breathed, I tried to interact, but inside, I was shattered, floating in a state of denial that, although a temporary refuge, soon proved to be a prison. What remained was a deafening silence, an empty room, an untouched side of the bed, and the agonizing realization that all my forevers had been abruptly cut short. I suddenly found myself at the brink of an abyss, where the desire to join that person was almost as strong as the instinct for survival. In that moment, there was no light, no path. There was only the absence, dense, heavy, and infinitely painful, inviting me to give up. The first phase of grief is the pain of absence. The second, and perhaps the most insidious, is the identity crisis. When you share such a profound life with someone, the line between I and we becomes indistinct. I was the partner, the companion, the confidant, the one who made plans with loved one's name. And suddenly this we, which was my anchor and my definition of the world, collapsed. Who was I without that title? I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger, an empty shell, an incomplete version of myself. The activities that once defined us, our trips, our inside jokes, even the way we organized the house, turned into painful reminders of what no longer existed. I found myself desperately searching for answers, trying to understand what my role was in this new life script that I had not written. I no longer knew what my favorite song was, we always listened to theirs, or what my favorite dish was, we always prepared ours. This loss of identity was a secondary grief, silent but equally devastating, as it attacked the very core of my individuality. Society, in its haste to see us overcome, expects us to return to our old selves, but the truth is that the old self no longer exists. It died along with the person we loved. The challenge was not to go back to being who I was, but rather to discover, or rather to create, who I would be from now on, honoring their memory, but living my own truth independently. This process of separating from us to rediscover me required a courage I didn't even know I possessed. It was the moment to recognize that the shared story had ended, but that my chapter, however painful, needed to continue to be written. This was my first great internal struggle, accepting that I needed to detach from the past, not to forget, but to flourish again. When the pain is so overwhelming, our primary instinct is to run away. We seek anesthesia in distractions, in excessive work, or even in persistent denial, hoping that time alone will fulfill the promise of healing. I did that. In the first few months, I lived according to external expectations, maintaining a facade of functionality that cost me all my internal energy. But this tactic is unsustainable. It's like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. Grief demands to be felt. My turning point came with what I call the commitment to pain. I stopped fighting the waves and decided to allow myself to be swept away by them, with the certainty that, at some point, I would resurface. This meant creating daily, sacred rituals for sadness. I allowed myself to cry without restraint, go through boxes of memories to the point of emotional exhaustion, and write letters with no recipient, pouring out all the anger, longing, and injustice I felt. I recognized that the pain was not a sign of weakness or a failure in my process. It was, in fact, the measure of the love I had felt. The greater the pain, the greater the connection was. This radical acceptance was liberating. Instead of fighting to overcome the pain, I started working to integrate it into my new reality. This taught me that healing is not a destination where sadness disappears. It is a process where sadness still exists, but no longer defines me completely. It is the art of carrying the loss with dignity, transforming the burden into memory and despair into resilience. It was a crucial step to understand that, instead of rejecting this dark part of me, I needed to embrace it as proof that the life we shared was real, meaningful, and full of love. After the commitment to pain, the next monumental step is reframing. For a long time, the memory of loved one was a source of tears and an anchor dragging me backward. I feared that by letting go of the extreme pain, I would somehow be dishonoring or forgetting the person. This is a common mistake in grief, confusing the intensity of the pain with the depth of the love. My rebirth began the moment I understood that the love we shared was not a past event, but rather a living legacy. The question shifted from, how can I live without them? To, how can I live in a way that honors them? I started actively searching for the positive marks they left on me. Their resilience, their sense of humor, their passion for mention a hobby/value of the loved one, justice, nature, music. I decided that the best way to keep this person alive was not to mourn their absence, but to incorporate their best into my own life. This resulted in the creation of new memory rituals. Perhaps it's visiting a place that was special and, instead of crying, smiling at the memories. Perhaps it's finishing a project we started together. Or, as in my case, using my experience to create this channel, transforming loss into a source of support and purpose. Memory, now, is not a statue of suffering. It is a torch that lights my path. I did not erase the past, but rather changed my relationship with it. The memory of the loved one has become part of my new identity, a foundation of love and strength that allows me to move forward, not despite the loss, but because of what I learned from the love we shared. If you have experienced a great loss, you know that the body feels grief as intensely as the mind. Sadness is physical, and discouragement paralyzes us. After reframing the pain and memory, the next challenge was forcing movement. I'm not talking about big leaps, but about the power of small steps. My world had become so small, limited to the bed and the couch, that the idea of resuming life felt overwhelming. I realized I needed to practice what I call radical self-care, which is doing the minimum necessary for my physical and mental survival without guilt or demand for performance. This minimum included tasks that were previously automatic. Taking a shower, eating a piece of fruit, going outside for 5 minutes. The biggest challenge was inertia. Loss creates an emotional gravity that keeps us tethered. I started with one rule. Every day, I would do one small thing outward. First, it was just opening the window, then walking to the gate, then a walk around the block. Physical movement, even slow, began to break the emotional stagnation. Furthermore, radical self-care meant being absurdly kind to myself. Not demanding perfection on bad days, for skipped meals, or for a messy house. It means understanding that, in a moment of extreme pain, survival is already success. It was in the rediscovery of my body, through gentle stretching or the sunlight on my skin, that the first spark of hope reignited. The body is our ally in healing, but it requires attention and patience. Remember, the goal is not to run, it is to not stop. It is to allow life, slowly, to flow through you again. Grief creates a bubble. In it, we feel safe but isolated. The worst part, for me, was the feeling that, by smiling or having fun, I was betraying the memory of loved one. This is the feared survivor's guilt. I felt that my suffering was the only proof that the love existed. Breaking this bubble was essential for my healing and was, by far, one of the most courageous acts. I needed to rebuild my support network, and this started with the simple act of accepting help. Family and friends often don't know what to say, but they want to help in practical ways. Cooking, going to the supermarket, just watching a movie in silence. I learned to be specific with my request. I don't need advice. I need company for an hour. Furthermore, seeking support in grief groups was transformative. Being in an environment where pain is the universal language eliminates the need for explanations and the fear of judgment. Listening to other stories made me understand that joy is not the denial of love, but its continuation. The greatest honor I can pay to the person who left is to live well. I started allowing myself small moments of happiness without guilt, knowing that the love we shared was big enough to coexist with my new life. Grief forces us to redefine who we are without that person. It is a work of vulnerability, of asking for a hand and accepting a shoulder, and of reintroducing lightness into life. Moving forward is not abandoning. It is integrating the absence and the love into your new self, and bravely reaching out to the world that still awaits you. We have reached the end of my journey, but not the end of the story. Grief has taught me that life is short, but the love we create is eternal. The grieving process is, in fact, a process of transformation. It is the time it takes for the acute pain to convert into sweet longing and, most importantly, into legacy. The true legacy of loved one is not in what they left behind, but in what they left in me. In every act of kindness I perform, in every sincere laugh I give, in every brave step I take in my new life, it is their influence that lives on. Honoring the legacy of the departed is to live a life that would make them proud, integrating the love that existed and transforming pain into purpose. If you are at the beginning of this journey, feeling lost, remember my words. Respect your time. Cry what needs to be cried. Allow yourself not to be okay. But, above all, do not stop walking. You don't have to get over the person. You need to redefine your life without them. The pain is proof of the magnitude of the love you felt. And that love is your strength. You will find joy again. You will laugh without feeling guilty. You will love again in another way. Life will not be the same, but it can be profoundly meaningful and happy. Love does not end with death. It transforms into memory, inspiration, and rebirth.